Chris Hensley is a registered representative of Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer member of FINRA SIPC, investment advisor representative of Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Houston First Financial Group are not affiliated.
The Houston Midtown chapter of the Society for Financial Awareness presents Money Matters with your host, Christopher Hensley.
Good morning, everybody. You're listening to KPFT Houston. I'm Chris Hensley. The time is now 11 a.m. Got to get used to saying that. They switched our slot for the last 3 to 4 years. We've been at 10 a.m., and so I'm trying to get my mouth to get that 11 out there. But you are joining us here at 11 a.m. Central Time, or if you're listening to the podcast, moneymatterspodcast.com. But with that, let's give you kind of a sneak peek into what our topic is today. While the President of the United States seems to be able to shock with each new tweet, and no depth seems to be too low for him to sink to, we've yet to hear from someone who has the heart of one of his signature outrage, Trump University. The infamous and elaborate scheme to con hundreds of earnest citizens out of their hard-earned dollars. Until now, author Stephen Gilpin will be joining us to talk about his new book, Trump U, The Inside Story of Trump University. It seems Stephen was actually a professor at Trump U, and he will give us kind of a deep dive into that with his newest book. So keep listening. Please stay tuned. If you are a long-time listener, you do know we reserve just the first few minutes of the show to tell you a little bit about what's going on here locally in Houston and the Gulf Coast region. Here at the station at KPFT, we are in the middle of a fund drive right now. And so for anybody who wants to contribute, there's a couple of different ways. They can go to pledge.kpft.org. There is a link on there that says donate now. Now, on the HD3 side, there's really not a way for you to say that you donated for Money Matters, but you can send a separate email to membership@kpft.org just to let them know that you do appreciate the show. As all shows are on KPFT, we are commercial free. There are no corporate sponsors, and so we are sponsored by the community. With that, just a reminder, we are still getting ready and set for Houston Money Week, which takes place in April of 2018. We are quickly approaching that, even though it seems like it's far away. We're really right on the cusp of Houston Money Week kicking off and getting started. So I would encourage people to visit the website www.houstonmoneyweek.org. That is free financial literacy through free financial events, from topics all the way from retirement, credit, education savings, to taxes-free tax preparation through the VITA program. Many, many different programs taking place in April during Financial Literacy Month. As we get closer, if you go to that website, there's going to be events added to the calendar each and every week. And so it starts out small, and then the closer we get, most of the community organizations start adding those events. It's even to the point where you can put your zip code in and find out which events are located near you, and find out more details as well. With that, let's go ahead and get Stephen on the line here, because I want to make sure we have the most amount of time with him. Stephen, are you there?
I'm here.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Well, usually what I'll do is I'll read your bio to the listeners so that they'll just get to know you a little bit better there. And I mentioned at the beginning that you were a professor at Trump University. You were born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. You taught real estate for more than a decade and has initiated and sealed countless deals in Florida, New York, Connecticut, and elsewhere. This is your first book, and you live in New York City as well.
That is correct. But I'm actually from Pittston, West Pittston, Pennsylvania.
Ah, okay.
It's about 350 miles away. Even though Pittsburgh is a great town to invest in.
Well, tell us something outside of the bio, something that we didn't mention already, just to kind of get to know you a little bit better.
I basically, a lot of people don't realize I still do education. I still teach a lot. I do my own podcasts and stuff for teaching also. But I'm still a teacher, and I'm still in the real estate business. I'm a real estate investor and developer. I buy and fix properties still, and I still go into areas that were hit heavy by natural disasters and revitalize them.
Well, that's great. And so this is something that you did before Trump University. You're still continuing to do a topic that you go out and you teach on. Well, let's dive right into it. Why did you write the book, Trump U?
You know, after the depositions and after testifying and all the Google, you know, most of the important thing is that a lot of people called me up during the whole Trump University scandal, during the process and the court hearings when it was hitting national news, and I couldn't talk about it. But a lot of people were saying, Steve, you know, what we're hearing on the news is that they were all con artists and that no one had real estate experience. But you do have real estate experience. When are they going to bring you up, or when are they going to say, no, I'm not a part of that group of salespeople? When are they going to differentiate? And it was my aunt who brought it up to me, saying, you need to do something. He needs to clear your name. And nobody cleared my name through the whole process. And even today, when you go to Google and you pull up the Trump University lawsuits, it says that, you know, Steve Gilpin, you know, is the only one remaining there, et cetera. And no one ever cleared my name because I do have real estate experience. I was born in the business. I've been doing it for, almost 30 years now. My whole life is real estate. So no one cleared my name. So after the settlement, which was just in this February of this year, the $25 million settlement after the appeal, I decided, you know what, I need to write my own book. If they're not going to clear my name, they're not going to write about it, I'm surely going to write about it. So that's the reason why I wrote the book.
Well, that's a good reason. We being here in Houston, we have when you said this, that I have in the financial services industry, Stanford here in Houston, and we had many people that were in the financial services industry that worked for Stanford that had no idea what was going on, and so even just having been employed or worked for, there was this stigma. But many of those people weren't actually involved with what would be the negative side or the bad side of it. So I like the idea of kind of giving us an insider's view of what that looked like to be a part of that. For listeners who aren't familiar with Trump University at all, can you kind of give us a little background as to what this is about?
Yeah, so Trump University, Donald Trump set up a real estate education investor training company called Trump University back in 2004. And he had hired some legit professors to teach real estate education. He owned the company 94%, and he owned the company with Michael Sexton and another person, I forget his name by chance right now, but who owns 2% majority votes of it. And what they did is they set up, teach the public the Donald Trump way of real estate. You want to be a millionaire, this is how you're going to be a millionaire in real estate. And you know, in the beginning, in 2004, all the way to about 2007, it really was a good education company. Legit professors, Professor Gary Elder, who, you know, is one of my mentors in the business. And it was really legit. It wasn't until Michael Sexton, the 4% owner, who had control, but also changed the business model and brought on a sales-driven Mark Dove con artist, basically, high-pressure speaker sales scam system. And what it was, basically, is they wanted to cast the net out there to catch millions of people and to bring them in and to upsell them in high-pressured sales. And that happened probably in 2006, 2007. That's when the switch took place. And that's when the business started going downhill, because the real estate experts that were there, like Ronald Schackenberg and all, and Gary Elder, they all left the business. The real professors, the real people left the business because they didn't like the way the business was being run. So Donald Trump always said that he would have an education company to teach the masses about real estate and how to become a millionaire. That's what it was all set up for, and it was his company. It was Michael Sexton's one of his ideas. Another Bear Stearns owner, one of his ideas also.
And that was, you mentioned that when that transition period came, when they started using kind of the high sales pressure tactics in 2006, that a lot of the people who had the actual knowledge, a lot of those professors actually left.
They left the company, and ironically, I was coming in to replace them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that's when I started coming in. In my interview, I talk about this, and because I look back at it and I laughed now a lot. My interview, they were so strict on interviewing me, with 8 to 10 people interviewing me, just to make sure I was credentialed, just to make sure I was licensed, and just to make sure I knew what I was talking about. But I was the in-house rep. I wasn't the sales team that was a part of Mark Dubb's Umpire and Prosper Learning Center. I wasn't a part of that team. So it was very interesting, how they qualified me, but they never qualified the other people, which is really bizarre to me. Thinking back at it, the days and nights of interviewing with this company and how they made sure I was really what I was doing and all. Yeah, it's quite interesting.
So when companies do their due diligence and they do these background checks and they make sure you're credentialed and licensed and they want to make sure you're an expert in your field, that all is not, say, the opposite of a red flag. That's like, okay, that seems normal. When did you start to get the feel that something was off?
It was when I was in-house. I started fielding in a lot of students that they sold at these live events. It would have a call, a number. So I would master I took over for Gary Eldred's, the Real Estate Investor Training Program online, which was a great program. I wish it was out there today for investors. It's a great program. But then I would filter in all of the complaints and students' questions. Because when you're going over and you're writing up a real estate contract, you need to have a professional in the field. They need to know what they're doing and all. So they had set up a hotline that the students can call from the live events to actually filter out their questions with the real estate expert. Well, that real estate expert guy was me. So then, that's when it started. Students will call and say, I did this transaction in Arizona, Texas, Delaware, in certain states and all. And with every state, you have to realize there's different real estate laws that you have to pay attention to and all. So one of the first ones I remember, and I write about it in the book, was this person called me from Arizona, actually in Texas. Let's use Texas, because it happened in Texas too, when they wanted to do clouding of the title of a property and flipping contracts. Well, in Texas, you can't do that. If you don't own the property, you can't market and sell it. And the Attorney General got down on Trump University about that because what they were doing and teaching at the live sales events was illegal in Texas. And I knew that, but I wasn't a part of the live sales side of it. I would only get the students who got in trouble. I'd get them and teach them how to get out of it or to teach them the legit way to do the transaction. But the Attorney General in Texas, they stopped us from teaching there.
So that's a good example of, as you mentioned, the laws differ from state to state, whether it's real estate or state planning or what have you. If you do it at it sounds like they went from a very specific to kind of a mass market where they were trying to get everybody, and then you have all of these different real estate laws over state lines. That sounds like the complaint lines would start blowing up there.
And I would be the one getting it, and then I couldn't believe. I didn't know who to believe. I didn't know if I should believe the company I work for, what they were teaching, or if they weren't. If they really did teach this at the live events, it set up a red flag to me immediately. And this is like 2008, when 2008 it started. And I went right to Michael Sexton and David Heibloom and everybody, and I said, you need to put a compliance auditor together. And you need to really compliance these people and what they're saying at the events. And I think the only thing they did at that time is they started recording all the events. But then the complaints kept on coming in, and students kept on getting in different states. More trouble, more problems I noticed would start pulling up. And at this point, my job was from teaching was basically helping students, correct their errors and trying to fix it and really and educate the students and all. Yeah, it was quite interesting.
So that sounds like with the amount of errors and things you had to correct, that would be something to keep you very busy there at the time.
I was very busy. I started, it was morning, and I went into the evening hours. And then some students actually had my cell phone number. I gave it out to them, and They'd call 7 days a week.
So this was kind of a red flag back in 2008, and it gave kind of made you, let me think about this here for a moment. And you mentioned them getting compliance and auditors, and they started recording the events and logging and document. What else came after that as you saw this kind of unravel?
Well, so then I started opening my mouth probably too much. Then they started sending me actually to audit these live events. And I started going to audit some of these speakers who were teaching some illegal stuff, illegal transactions, and teaching you how to do certain things in certain states. So before I would go, I would study the laws in that state and all. And then, like even in Canada, they shipped me out to Canada. I had 24 hours to study the laws and go out to Canada and teach. I had 24 hours to go to Texas, to go up in Texas and teach in Texas. At their live events and at the sell side of it. So then I felt like, I'm not the compliance auditor. I'm actually helping them make more sales on these unethical people. And I thought, boy, I'm being used here. And then the only thing I could think of is at least I know the students would get an education. Mm-hmm. And they'll be taught legit transactions and all. So that's where mostly the thing is, my whole job focus turned into give them the education, Steve. Give them the education that they deserve and that they paid for. We write about that in the book a lot.
And so that was after the initial 2008, after you had mentioned the compliance auditor. They actually sent you out to these live events and gave you about 24 hours to kind of get up to snuff on the state laws or even national laws if it's in Canada, but then try to some of the speakers who were going to say off the reservation here, you were able to at least bring some of that to the students.
Right.
What else did you see? I know eventually when I didn't even know of this until when it hit the news and there were all these lawsuits going. What happened between then and I guess when you first started seeing this major coverage of the lawsuits?
Well, they started giving out refunds to the students when the lawsuits started. I remember we spent a couple of weeks in the office, and they just started refunding out students that were high-risk students that were going to consider suing. In order to prevent it, they started giving out refunds. Now, if they started that from the get-go and did that from the get-go and all, there probably wouldn't be lawsuits. The company, I always believed that the company could have been fixed and all. I even did PowerPoint presentations for the company and all, but no one really wanted to hear it. And I get it. I get, where they're coming from, but, to be drug into the middle of it and be the honest guy and the ethical guy inside the transactions and inside the company, it just, it fell to deaf ears. And that was the problem.
It sounds like there was a pivotal point where it could have been fixed.
Absolutely.
If
2009, 2010, I prepared the PowerPoint presentation. Now, don't get me wrong. In order to fix it, you'd have to do a lot of firing, you'd have to reorganize the whole company, and you'd have to have Donald Trump come back in and give you an influence of $1 million, I think on my PowerPoint presentation was. But could it be done? Absolutely, 100%. We could have turned around and got rid of it, fixed it, gave out refunds, and kept it going. But, I was just this guy in real estate they didn't want to listen to as business.
So I imagine after that point, kind of that pivotal turning point where it could have been repaired if they didn't implement those things, then you kind of probably watched it go downhill from there. Could you describe?
2009, 2010, it was going downhill. Mm-hmm. And the sad part about it, and I write about this in the book, we didn't even know. I was never informed that we were going to be closing up. I stayed on until 2011, and I stayed on to testify and in my depositions until 2013. There was only 3 of us left. I felt like I was on the Trump Apprentice. There was 3 of us left. And when my paycheck stopped coming in. And then I realized I have a family to support. You know, I can't not live without a paycheck. And then they stopped cutting my paycheck, and then the handwriting was on the wall. I'm not working for free. You know, like the Trump right now, he has all these people working for free, and he's working for free. I'm not doing that. I'm not a multi-billionaire. I do real estate. You know, it's a good money-making business, and it's an honest living. But, you know, it's not a multi-billionaire where I can live without a salary. So when the handwriting was on the wall and they didn't pay me my last couple paychecks, that's when I started looking for other education companies to hire me and to start seeking. And I tell you, during those interview processes is the first thing they brought up, because they Googled me and they said, were you involved with Trump University? Why is your name all over the internet about Trump University? And I'm like, I was a real estate professor. And then trying to explain yourself, going back to clearing your name, you know. But I did end up working for one of Donald Trump's golfing buddies at his real estate school.
Well, so this is what you just said. It reminded me of the people that I know that work for Stanford. There is a stigma when you get your name attached to it. And as I was doing the research for the show, I mean, one of the things that you mentioned is that you weren't somebody who was anti-Trump. I mean, you went into this as respecting Trump.
Absolutely. I went into this as I looked at Mary, you have to realize, I left Orlando, Florida, where I had over 3,000 agents working for me from a mortgage brokerage business side of it and real estate side of it. I had a huge company I owned and all. I shut down my company to come to New York to work with Donald Trump because I thought it was going to be a pivot career change. You know, back then in the early 2000s, you know, even though a lot of people didn't like Trump, but not as much as they do today. There's a lot of people admire Trump. And I even consulted with my family, and they're like, yeah, for your next career level, you have to take this job. You know, so I took the job.
And you were kind of one of the last man standing. I was
the last man standing.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't the last one. I was one of three. So I left, and then it went down to one. And I always said, Mark Covey got the Celebrity Apprentice.
There you go. Well, you mentioned that, you know, one of the things is you said the writing was on the wall that you didn't get a paycheck at some point, where even in 2013 where you stayed around, you were doing the deposition, but then they stopped giving a paycheck. And there's kind of a pattern there. You hear that a lot with these Trump businesses is people not getting paid. Are there things now, kind of in retrospect, as you look back, that you would share with listeners for kind of an insider's view as to what that looks like?
Well, one of the things I want the viewers to know, because, you know, just because Donald Trump had this education company first, and he was the biggest, you know, ego and the business side of it, one of the things I want people to know, because there is so many of these seminar businesses that claim to be rich in real estate. Trust me, it is the hardest job I've ever done. It is 24/7. Yes, you can be successful, but it takes a lot of work. And all these gurus that you see today, and you have them right there in Texas. I know a couple of them without mentioning their names. They do events there. Be careful. Be careful what you're signing up for. Do your background check and make sure you're not going to become a millionaire out the gate. It's not going to happen. It's not the reality of it. It's a high-pressured sales pitch. Do your due diligence, check who you're working with, and check the legit people in the business. Ask them to see. You know, I can prove I'm a real estate investor because I have hundreds and hundreds of HUD-1 settlement statements proving my transactions and all that I've done. I'm buy, fix, and flips. So does that classify me as a real estate expert? Yes, it does, because I've done hundreds of them in multiple states and all. I teach it for a living and all. I've written, this is my first book that's published, but I've written 32 other books and all on real estate that just haven't been published yet. But one of the things is make sure when you're going to these live events, because they're going to send you, it's all a sales pitch, and people don't realize that. Like, I want to use some names as they're doing it, but I shouldn't because they'll probably end up suing me. There's these real estate gurus in Texas and all over the United States that say, get rich in real estate, attend my 3-day free workshop and all. and stuff. They're selling you. You're being sold, and a lot of people don't understand that. Because even some of the students that left Trump University and later on Trump Entrepreneur Initiative, when they left, they went to these other gurus, and they paid these other gurus $30-some thousand to teach them. And it's like, wake up, America. Wake up. And all. Work with the Department of State, the Board of Education. Work with legit professors that will teach you real estate. Get a coach and mentor that is really doing real estate. And things like that. I mean, that's the biggest thing I want people to understand. When somebody's asking you to pay you $25,000 from a Salesforce team based out of Utah and all, and it's a call center and stuff, get a mentor that's holding your hand and all. Don't waste the money on, the education. You can read about it. You can learn it yourself. You can hire a coach and mentor to hold your hand. You can attend legit classes to get the education side of it and all. And that's really what I want people to realize. Because a lot of people, they still attend these Robert Kiyosaki's. They still attend. Oh, I better not mention names.
That's okay.
They're paying these $20-some thousand for these events. And it's like, $20-some thousand. One of the things I teach you in real estate is to save up $25,000 to start investing. Well, if you're spending that for your education and you're not getting a property or doing some type of transaction, then you made a mistake from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, you were sold into a high-pressured sales, and that's what these people are. They're high-pressured salespeople, and it's just got to be really careful. Be smarter, America.
I love that. I love what you're saying. I mean, you said be careful of what you sign up for. Do your homework. Do your research. Make sure that these are legit professors. Real estate's not bad. There are many people that are successful at real estate investing. However, when your red flag should go off when somebody's standing there asking you for $20,000 to $25,000 premiums hefty up front.
And your credit card to reach a $25,000. I mean, that's just beyond me.
Yes, and
that would sit with a real estate advisor or a guru and up their credit card for $25,000. That's insane.
Somebody's getting rich somewhere, but it's probably not going to be us. So that's all good information to give to people to let them know. It's not there's if it sounds too good to be true, it's probably not true.
Too good to be true.
There's usually not a silver bullet. And even the people that were successful at what you taught, I'm sure there was blood, sweat, and tears. I mean, they worked to be successful in real estate. They had to, just like you as a successful real estate investor, you had to work to get there, and so there's no free rides there.
Let's put it this way. I will say this. It's not only blood, sweat, and tears, because I can't tell you how many times I in construction I've hurt my hands with a hammer or screw gun, or I've even broken bones. Just a couple months ago, I dropped a sheetrock I was hanging on the ceiling. I dropped it on my toes, and I actually broke my toes on my foot. It's blood, sweat, and tears and broken bones.
Well, Stephen, we are bumping right towards the end of the show. We got just a few more minutes left. I feel like we could sit here and this is so interesting. I want to ask more while I have you on the line. But what did I forget to ask you that you want listeners to know?
I want listeners to know, I go through the book and I talk about the beginnings. I talk about Donald Trump and his background and his family. And, it's just not about Trump University. I mean, the majority of it is, the good and the bad and the ugly. I lay it all out in the book. And I give you a little bit of background about myself and my information and about my life, where I started from. Because, I didn't start off in real estate. Even though my father was a builder, I didn't start off in it. But I talk about it.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Money Matters Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, visit us on the web at www.moneymatterspodcast.com. Drop us a line on SpeakPipe on the right-hand corner. It will receive any voicemails, questions, thoughts, concerns that you have about the show. In addition to this, we recently launched a Patreon campaign. Click on the Donate Now tab to hit the tip jar and find out what Patreon's campaign is all about.